Blowback is on our face.
We have more drugs today than we did 10 years ago.
Massacre at the Rome airport.
The unintended consequences are a thing.
Stinger missiles
Against
have a
terrorists.
blowback or a boomerang.
The unintended consequences are enormous.
The CIA's secret warriors helped America win the Cold War, but their victories had a price which no one expected to pay. The unintended consequences from secret operations have come home to haunt the agency.
They didn't give a shit about the unintended consequences. The President of the United States told them to get rid of that government.
For almost a half-century, the Central Intelligence Agency was the invisible hand of American power. It overthrew governments, created secret armies, consorted with drug lords, and hired assassins.
My philosophy, get the weapons into the hands of the shooters and really let God sort it out.
If you want to terrorize the world, you need the CIA.
I said, I want you to tell Abu Abbas that I'm coming after him. And when I get to him, I'm going to kill him.
The fallout from 50 years of covert operations has damaged the reputation and credibility of the United States and steadily eroded America's faith in the CIA.
How are we supposed to trust the CIA officials to investigate themselves?
There is a word in the agency for fallout from a secret mission: blowback. Blowback hit home for many Americans in 1979. 53 hostages were seized in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran by supporters of the anti-American Ayatollah Khomeini. The CIA, under President Carter and his director Stansfield Turner, was caught by surprise by the hostage crisis.
The hostage crisis in Iran was a turning point in our attitude towards terrorism. It was because it may have been one of the first times we realized as a country that a superpower could be so vulnerable.
For 444 days, America was held hostage with the captives. 3 of the prisoners were CIA officers. The agency had once managed Iran's mobs. Now, the CIA was at the mob's mercy. In 1953, a handful of CIA officers carried out the agency's first successful coup. They hired Iranian gangs to block Premier Mossadegh's plan to take over Western oil companies.
There are a lot of Iranians who now say that it was a great mistake to get rid of Mossadegh and put the Shah back on there, because if Mossadegh had stopped, you never would have had Khomeini. Well, hell, I don't know whether you would have or not. But the pressure in those days was to get rid of that son of a bitch who had nationalized the Anglo-Iranian oil company. Selfish, greedy, if you like, overweening, powers that were exerted on little people. All of these things, maybe they stink to high heaven.
The CIA restored the pro-American Shah to his peacock throne. And for the next 25 years, it helped to keep him there. With the CIA's aid, the Shah built a repressive secret police force, Savak, which tortured and murdered thousands of Iranians. Rage against America for the CIA actions simmered in the streets of Tehran. In 1979, the Ayatollah Khomeini led an Islamic revolution which overthrew the Shah. His supporters stated the takeover of the U.S. Embassy was payback time.
I don't believe that we in the CIA at that time understood the culture of Iran well enough. That is, that there was this substantial clerical movement that was growing in importance.
Khomeini sparked a jihad, a holy war against the great Satan, America. Blowback hit again in 1983. Iranian-backed Shiites bombed the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, the CIA headquarters in Lebanon.
The chief of station in our station in Beirut, before he accepted the assignment, was at dinner with me and asked me what I thought. And I had to say to him, he said, you know, you could get killed. It's a dangerous job. If you don't, you'll come home having said it was the best job you ever had.
The embassy blast killed 63 people. Among them were 9 CIA employees, including Anderson's friend, the chief of station.
It was a horrible day to have to replay that conversation when I realized that it had happened.
The agency was up against a new kind of enemy, difficult to locate, much less destroy. Finding an effective response was a dilemma. Violent retaliation might provoke still more blowback. Recruiting agents to infiltrate terrorist cells could also cause problems.
We had an individual who was just about inside a terrorist organization when they said to him, you must go out and murder so-and-so in order to prove to us that you're really part of us. They came to me and said, do we let him do this and have this payoff of inside information or not? And I said, absolutely not.
The CIA's options were limited. It could not legally use the same tactics as terrorists. Iran was not the only problem. Libya's Muammar Gaddafi was the godfather of Middle East terrorism. The CIA found out just how hard it could be to thwart him.
We did, at one point, manage to get a microphone, a listening device, into a safe site in which a group of terrorists, paid for by the Libyans, were planning terrorist operations against international civil aviation. The microphone just happened to be a lot closer to a refrigerator than it was to the conversations, which left us in a position of frustratingly knowing that they were planning attacks on aircraft, knowing that it was probably going to happen someplace, but we never knew where, we never knew when, until the day that we all came to work faced with the fact that this one had got by us. They did it.
For over a decade, Gaddafi's men were behind a series of atrocities, from the 1973 Rome airport attack to the 1985 Christmas season massacre that murdered 19 people in the Rome and Vienna airports. President Ronald Reagan and CIA Director William Casey decided it was time to revamp the agency's approach to dealing with terrorism.
I went to see Casey, and Casey said, the president's really got the heat on me about the DO or the CIA doing better on the terrorist problem. And I said, well, I've got some ideas. And he said, well, look, take a couple months off, the usual one, take a couple months off, and put together a plan.
Casey and Claridge shook up the CIA bureaucracy by creating a counterterrorism center. The new plan was a bureaucratic reshuffle and a more aggressive stance.
Casey had in various policy councils argued for a very proactive anti-terrorist program, including the snatching or kidnapping of terrorists.
Counterterrorism, you're either on the offensive, which is the only way to go, because you'll never build your walls high enough or put enough barbed wire up or electronics devices to ever protect yourself from these people. You gotta go get them.
In 1986, based on information provided by U.S. intelligence, American warplanes bombed Tripoli and hit Gaddafi's residence in retaliation for a terrorist attack on a German discotheque.
Pilots of the air and naval forces of the United States spoke to the outlaw Libyan regime in the only language that Colonel Gaddafi seems to understand.
Libya claimed that 37 civilians were killed, including Gaddafi's stepdaughter. But Gaddafi survived.
In the mindset of the Middle East, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, this would have been seen and was seen by the Libyan government as a blood debt to be settled.
The blowback came 2 years later. In December of 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland. Gaddafi's revenge killed 270 people.